ഇന്ന് നമ്മൾ ഡിമെൻഷ്യയുടെ വേറൊരു ഭാഗമാണ് ചർച്ച ചെയ്യാൻ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത്. ലീഗൽ ആസ്പെക്ട്സ് ഓഫ് ഡിമെൻഷ്യ. ഒരു ഡിമെൻഷ്യ രോഗിയെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് എന്തൊക്കെയാണ് ലീഗൽ ആസ്പെക്ട്സ്? ഇന്ന് നമ്മുടെ ഒപ്പം ഈ വിഷയങ്ങൾ ചർച്ച ചെയ്യാൻ അഡ്വക്കേറ്റ് സന്ധ്യയാണ് എത്തിയിരിക്കുന്നത്. സോ വെൽക്കം സന്ധ്യ ടു ദ പ്രോഗ്രാം. ആൻഡ് can you give us a brief idea? You're practicing lawyer for nearly 25 years in the High Court. And I understand that you're involved in a lot of things. So welcome, and just give us a brief introduction on what you do so we would know what you're involved in.
Thank you so much. Actually, I'm very happy to be part of this discussion. I have been practicing in the High Court, in the courts for the past 25 years. I have a 25-year experience. But I also run an NGO. I was part of an NGO, Human Rights Law Network, and I started my own NGO called Center for Constitutional Rights.
Okay.
And in this entire span of my working with both two NGOs, which is a legal sensitization NGO, we provide legal sensitization, legal advocacy, legal assistance for deserving cases. We've seen that people, we are all aware about issues as such, but we're not aware about the legal impact or the ways of using the law to help us. That's what I feel, and that's what prompted me to actually start this organization. And we are focus is mainly on women, children, the disabled, the disadvantaged sections of the society, the vulnerable sections of the society, and there are a large category of those.
Okay.
The mainstream is different, and then there are those on the margins, So we work along with the margins of the society. Yeah.
That's great. And regarding dementia, Kerala is aging, and there are a large number of senior citizens who actually have dementia. And regarding the legal side, what are some of the legal implications of the disease? Because the mental capabilities are affected. Dementia as a disease, your judgment, your thinking, your memory, your reasoning, all of this is affected. So how does this, work out legally?
When we look at dementia as a category of a condition, there are two aspects which come into the picture. So there is the disability angle, because when you are impaired from actually doing your regular activities, you are disabled, and it comes within the concept of disability. But it also brings in the mental health aspects, because it also leads to a cascading effect. The dementia will also have a cascading effect on our mental health aspects. So there are two particular, if you look at the legal perspective, there are these two legislations which kind of cover them. The thing is, whether we put dementia under a mental health category or the disability category is something is still out for discussion. Okay. Because it doesn't, dementia as a condition does not come purely within the disability
Exactly.
definition.
Yeah.
But the thing is, mental health issue or mental illness is part of disability, and the disabilities, the new Rights of Person with Disabilities Act 2017 actually makes the disability definition quite broad, which we can incorporate dementia into it.
The aspect of dementia is, one is the, in the early stages, it is just the mental health capabilities which are lost, and towards the advanced cases, advanced dementia is when the physical capabilities are lost.
Exactly.
So supposing now, we commonly see families, especially with very capable seniors, and in your experience, like what really, how can we actually protect the seniors from being manipulated? Because one of the things is their judgment is affected, so we often find that they're easily manipulated. So in that aspect, is there something the family should do or family should know in terms of
When dementia, what I feel is in my, from what I've seen with people dealing with with people with this condition, when it starts off, no one really understands or no one really realizes this is happening, because this is a slow, it has a slow the way,
Yeah.
the both is slow
Very slow, yeah.
transition. So what happens is, in the initial stages, it's like, even like we might forget our keys somewhere and it's say, oh, we've forgotten the keys, we don't remember, and we try to recollect and restep. So you start off like that, but then gradually it starts increasing, in the sense, like, I mean, from what I understand,
Yeah.
you might have forgotten to have your, you may think that you've had your breakfast, but then you think, oh, I didn't have my breakfast.
You've forgotten that you've
You've
had your
forgotten
bread.
that we've had a breakfast. Or someone has just said, come, hi, എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് അകത്ത് കയറി വന്നു, and then suddenly after some time you're like, this person has not come, where is he or where is she എന്നുള്ള രീതിയിൽ. So these are things which no one really understands, or the person who's going through does not really understand it.
Yeah.
And it's very, so if the family members or the caregivers do not understand this, it's a very difficult situation both for the caregiver as well as the person who's undergoing it, because it becomes a very conflicting situation. So ഇങ്ങനത്തെ സിറ്റുവേഷനിൽ നമ്മുടെ ട്രഡീഷണൽ ഒരു സ്ട്രക്ചർ വെച്ച്, നമ്മുടെ ട്രഡീഷണൽ ലിവിങ് സ്ട്രക്ചർ വെച്ച് നോക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ, ഒരു 60-65 വയസ്സാകുമ്പോഴത്തേക്ക് റിട്ടയർ ആയി. അപ്പൊ പിന്നെ ഇറ്റ്സ് ലൈക്ക് ചിൽഡ്രൻ ടേക്ക് കൺട്രോൾ എന്നുള്ള രീതിയിൽ, ചിൽഡ്രൻ സ്റ്റാർട്ട് എക്സ്പെക്ടിങ് ദാറ്റ് ദേ ഹാവ് ടു ടേക്ക് കൺട്രോൾ. സോ ലൈക്ക് യൂഷ്വലി വിമൻ ആർ, women are people who are always being taken care of, or either through their husbands or through it's always.
Yeah.
So somehow അവർക്ക് അത്ര ഒരു ചിലപ്പം ഇനീഷ്യൽ സ്റ്റേജസിൽ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ട് വരത്തില്ലായിരിക്കും. The males have been usually the people in charge, and they are the ones who are taking these decisions,
and they are managing the money, they are managing all the legal aspect, every
property, full actions അവരായിരിക്കും ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അങ്ങനെ വരുമ്പോഴത്തേക്ക്, when this happens, it becomes very difficult. The person who is actually seeing this, this person is actually not is spending money recklessly or giving checks recklessly, and he's not even understanding the consequences. It becomes very difficult. So it's very important earlier on that family needs to understand, as soon as the onset വരുമ്പോഴേ they start taking steps towards, rather than waiting till the end, they start taking steps. And some of the steps you can really take ഒത്തിരി complicated അല്ല, which is one of the most simplest step is this power of attorney thing, which I would say that as soon as you feel that there is
a suspicion,
there is going to be misuse of funds, they are using their own funds, and we are talking about people who are well to do, who have money which can be disposed of, or property which can be disposed of. It's very important that the family starts taking precautionary controls. And adannu parayumbadthekku, you don't have to totally leave the agency to the the person who is giving that control should not feel that my agency is totally lost. So there is this concept of limited guardianship under the Disabilities Act. There's a concept of advanced directive under the Mental Health Act. These are some of the aspects which we can use. Power of attorney is one thing where you can give it to the parent, or to the
child, or the spouse.
To the spouse, or to the one of the sibling, one of the children, or if no one is there, to any sibling.
So how do you access a power of attorney? Like if somebody wants to do a power of attorney, they would need the permission of the person with dementia. So how does that go?
So see, dementia is not something which, like, you are on it forever, like 24 hours a day. It's like there will be
the initial phases, there will be
there needs to be, one needs to start talking about it. Start talking about it on a regular basis. Start making them understand this is going to be a problem. It is a kind of, we need it. It's not like suddenly one day you go and say, okay, let's have a power of attorney. No, it has, once you see that this is going to happen, and this is a person who is very independent minded and is not going to let go of the charge easily, you have to start talking to that person on a regular basis, so that eventually
Conditioning them.
conditioning them and make the power of attorney and get it registered with the registrar.
Okay.
So that the registrar, I'm not even a lawyer, I'm not saying a notary, but usually even notary is okay. But going and getting it done before the sub-registrar, that would give more genuinity and more authenticity to him, and it will be like proven, because the registrar can easily ask, are you sure, are you doing it with your full free will and all. I mean, the registrars usually ask that question. So when it happens like that, then that cannot be questioned in law,
Okay, so what about this limited guardianship? What are the instances where that would be required, and what exactly is
when in the
limited?
Disabilities Act, the new Disabilities Act actually intends to make people with disability independent and
Okay.
having full autonomy over themselves. But and it's a very new concept. It's not something which is easily acceptable to a lot of people, because you see a person on a wheelchair, or you see a person who's blind, or you see a person who is with cerebral palsy, or someone like Stephen Hawking, and in normal cases we say, oh, he cannot do anything, we'll have to do it.
Yeah.
But a person like Stephen Hawking has so much of mind, the brain is so active, that he will not allow anyone else to, but there are certain, he will not allow anyone else to control his life. We can imagine.
Obviously,
So but there are certain things he cannot do. It is not, he needs help for that assisted help. So that so that legal capacity, for those aspects, you have a limited guardianship, where with his consent, or with her, if someone like that, with her consent, you can
do certain aspects,
and you can get it from the court.
Okay.
And that means that whatever you do, it is like, it is understood. The person who gets the guardianship, it is understood that this person is doing it under the advice, or the person who is disabled knows that this is what is being done, and he can always change it later on also. I mean, it's not as if
it's not a permanent
thing. And there is also monitoring aspects also involved in it. So that needs to be given more awareness. And we should again, it's something which needs to be sensitized. People should start like kind of feeling, okay, instead of making them feel that you are totally useless, starting to make them feel empowered by, see, let's do this, and it's more of a dialogue and discussion, and this can be sorted off, and the courts can also will give the guardianship. The thing is, no one knows about it, so no one approaches the court.
True.
So that is the thing. And for people like people with cerebral palsy, autism, you just need to go to the collector, apply for guardianship, and it's not a quick process, but still it's much less cumbersome than the court. But still, that is much through a lot of sensitization and a lot of awareness campaigns that is being done. So it's the similar process for the district court, where like for limited guardianship, you will have to go to court for getting that guardianship, and it's much more authentic. So people need to understand that you need, if for proper security or proper protection of your resources, it's best to go to the court. Thing is, we need to make people understand that you need to be legally aware of your rights, and this is one way which will protect your rights, so people will willingly come forward. So those who are aware about it, they definitely approach the lawyers, or they definitely approach the system to get their rights enforced or rights protected. That needs to be done.
So the family, one thing you discussed was about the power of attorney, limited guardianship. Is there any other thing that
there is, we have a concept called advanced directive under the Mental Health Act. Now that is something which deals with providing treatment. So the person who, the idea is that like a person with mental illness is not mentally ill throughout. There are phases of sanity, where he's able to do, he or she is able to do things properly, with maybe medication, without medication, depending upon the degree of his condition. So when he is in a sane condition, he can authorize someone to take decisions on his behalf. So when that is done in his sane condition and those things are written down, then that what happens is that now if that person goes into that period of insanity, this person can take charge, and this advance directive is used
Already
to
in place.
take place.
See, because many times what we see is that a person with dementia is usually in their 80s or late 80s, early 90s, and at that point it becomes a very difficult decision for the children. Suddenly a child will fly in from abroad, and they are asked, should we put your parent on a ventilator or not, and should we go for because the doctors also, they would have no clarity, and in terms of preserving life, we would have to do everything in our power to preserve life. So the advance directive would be a very good option for even the family to sit and decide.
These are things which we need with as things like advance directive, things like living will. These are aspects which a family should sit and talk about, so that you start preparing yourself. I mean, it's not preparing yourself to die, but it is preparing yourself to live in a very dignified manner. That is the entire objective of it.
I often say, when we are preparing for a baby to be born, it's a huge effort. There's a lot of preparation, there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of work that in fact the entire family is involved in that. And the only guarantee when you are born is that one day you will die. When, we don't know, but the preparation for having a good dignity in death is also important.
Dignity. So when you're talking about dignity in death, it's also dignity of the person to make their own decision.
Exactly.
It's like it doesn't mean that a person who's going through dementia, or person who has Alzheimer's, or person who has a very debilitating physical condition, they do not have the mental capacity to think or decide for themselves. So we as caregivers should also have the understanding and sensitivity to say that they have said this, we need to respect their decisions.
True.
So that particular, it's all a matter of respect and giving dignity, and that is what is trying to be ensured. It's in this, as soon as you see that the person does not have a hand or a leg or an eye, or his mental capacity is going down, you suddenly start thinking that the fellow or that person is useless, and you stop giving dignity to that individual. So that needs to be avoided. That stigma needs to be avoided. That we need to start talking about it. We need the family, because now it's like a taboo to even talk about death. It's like, why are you talking about it? What is the problem? Do you want them to die, or it's like
a stigma.
It's a stigma associated. So people should start, because when you are healthy in your mid, that is between 15 to let's say 18, because till 18 you're a child, so you have someone else to look after. But from 18 to maybe 50 or maybe 55 maximum, you are at your prime. Then your bodily health starts deteriorating.
True.
So as an individual, we need to start preparing, rather than saying that death is not going to happen. You need to start preparing your life so that you'll have a dignified life later on, and everyone needs to start talking about it, discussing about it, and ensuring that
there's a plan in place.
Because
nobody is actually prepared to be disabled, and no one thinks, I'm going to get dementia.
Exactly.
We are not prepared for something like that.
True.
And yet the numbers are staggering. It's going into lakhs of people.
But people don't talk about it. No, people don't, because you trivialize this entire thing, and even talking about mental illness, no one even wants to take help, because you start thinking that it is there is a stigma associated with it.
True,
And when we look at mental illness, we look at disability, and dementia comes in between both. When it comes in between both, people are totally clueless. There is a total gray area. So unless people start approaching the system for getting their rights protected, only then will the system be also geared to protect the rights. So we have the statutes in place, we have the laws in place. People need to use that to get themselves protected.
True.
That is what we have to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. We've discussed a lot of things, and just in closing, can you give us some insight into maybe any of your experiences or anything you want to say about any examples you can tell us about dealing with dementia?
I would say that I've had cases. I've been told about cases, and I've intervened in cases where well-to-do families, individuals who've been quite active in their heydays, suddenly, and their children are all well established. They are also, and they're all living alone. They suddenly, when this starts to come in, they suddenly being taken advantage of by their caregivers, who are very who have ill motives,
Like home nurses.
home nurses,
Okay.
and I wouldn't say everyone, but where people have lost their ornaments, gold ornaments. They've given off lakhs and lakhs of rupees based on this person, the person's request, saying that for my child's education or for someone's ill, for treating and
medical
things like
treatment.
that. Massive checks being issued.
Okay.
Because they have the capacity and they're not visibly mentally ill, or they're living their life on their own. Children are all abroad. The brothers and sisters here, they see this and they inform the children. Then when the children come, the children are not even allowed to enter the house because brainwashing has been done. And
because they can be easily manipulated.
You just have to be very nice to them, and you can manipulate. So today's world is very difficult actually that way. When you cannot easily make out who is nice and who is not nice just by looking at people.
Okay.
And my family, I would say my family also as an example, in the sense, how difficult it is. My father is in his initial stages of dementia, and my mother is also aged. She's thankfully she is actually managing everything.
So your father was working?
My father was an army officer, so he was a colonel in the army, and so you can imagine he was quite he was managing everything,
giving orders.
giving orders. I mean, he was used to giving orders rather than taking instructions. So it's now. Kind of he's realized, and he's given that entire thing, allowed that instructions to allowed my mother to take charge.
Wow, okay.
But the thing is, so I would say we are all outliers. Like my family is an outlier, my husband's family is outliers, because it's totally, I think it's a more of a democratic setup has come in, where everyone is allowed. But the traditional thing is, most families are in that tradition where the father is actually looking after the wives. Generally may not be totally involved in anything. They may not even know the bank accounts, how to handle. I mean, we have 30 years, 40-year-old women coming and saying that I don't know, I don't have a bank account, or I don't know how to go to the bank. Thankfully, my mother will, even now at the age of 75, she's quite adept at using the GPay or the internet savvy. My father has stopped all that because he cannot manage. He feels that he cannot handle that. My mother can handle. The thing is, to handle these people as children who are also quite independent on their own, it's difficult, because for them to understand or take instructions from the children or take advice from the children,
they still see us as
babies.
Small babies.
So it's difficult that way. So it involves a lot of patient understanding, talking to them and explaining to them, and it takes a lot of effort. But the thing is, we cannot just let go, because they need to be given that respect, and they need to be given that dignity, understanding that they are capable. It's just that there are certain conditions which makes it difficult for them at this point, and you assist them. So we just look back, and so we've been definitely, to all of us siblings have been talking about, thankfully we touch wood have no those trust issues. We've been talking about this living will.
Wow.
and will and discussions, and my parents actively talk about that. It's not as if that they constantly push me to make the will and prepare it at this point. I mean, is that kind of discussion is happening. My mother openly says, don't put me in a ventilator and all when I'm
Yeah,
ill.
yeah,
She very
yeah.
clearly says it.
Exactly,
So
okay.
these are some things, but we are very open to talk about death.
Yeah.
Open to discuss, open to prepare it. But not many families even talk about it,
about
or
it.
even joke about it. It's okay. I mean, it is definitely going to happen. But when that road towards this death happens,
The journey is
the
much
journey,
better.
the journey, you need to be prepared. You need to
Yeah.
prepare for that journey, which many people are not doing, and when
Okay.
not talking about it. And many people even just, "Arey, why are you talking about that? You should not be. It's very unlucky or very ashub to talk about it."
Okay.
So you just close it, or it's like a very emotional drama coming out there. Ki, "Arey, what is this?" and all that. So that needs to go off.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that is the thing. I feel. As individuals, we need to be very aware about ourselves. We should not be blind to a lot of things. We need to see them. We need to understand that this is one of the journeys which are going to
Yeah.
happen. It's part of it. I mean, if we're born, we're going to die anyway.
Exactly.
So prepare ourselves so that we live a life of dignity during this process, rather than saying blindly believing that other people will help or other people will have that thought process with us. We should
Yeah.
not do that. We should prepare ourselves in advance so that it becomes a very easier path, and we are more in control of our life. And preparing this living will or advanced directive, or this giving the power of attorney to a trusted person whom you feel will not take advantage of you, is actually taking control of your lives. It is not actually losing control.
True.
We need to understand those aspects, and we need to, like, how we take the assistance of doctors when we get cold or illness or whatever.
medical.
We should also take the assistance of lawyers for our understanding of our rights and duties and responsibilities, because that way our life is much more conflict free.
Okay.
And it makes it much more easier, and it gives a pathway. One should not get afraid of the legal system as such.
Yeah.
Because if it comes, it's always there to provide the justice. I mean, that's what the ideal is. So we all of us are working towards that. So the thing is not to get afraid. Approach, speak to a lawyer, speak to a trusted lawyer, speak to someone who knows about it, understand these aspects about it, and prepare accordingly. It's all prevention is better than cure, we always say. So you prepare accordingly, and there is nothing wrong in it's not like you're going to go fight against your children or fight against your brothers and sisters or whatever. It is basically preparing yourself, and you need to be assertive about that. You don't have to think twice of what people will say or why am I doing this and things like that. No, the person who does this is much more smarter than anyone else. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, thank you very much, Advocate Sandhya. It was very informative. In fact, I think I learnt a lot of things. We learnt a lot of new terminologies. And I think at the end of it, just to conclude, it's important to know that dementia is a disease, or it is a condition that is affecting a person, but their dignity needs to be preserved. And there are systems in place, there are laws that we can access, and we hope that this video was informative. Thank you, Advocate Sandhya.
Thank you.